Alright guys, welcome back to the leather backpack video. So in the last one we got all of our main large panels stitched together. We did a lot of stitching in that one. It was probably very boring for you guys to watch. It was quite boring for me to actually do, although it was also kind of relaxing. I still have some pretty nasty blisters all over my hands, so we're going to try and take a break from stitching for a little while here because we still have our big long stitches to do along our verticals. But before we can do that, we need to go through and add in all of our straps and everything. So in order to do our straps, we've got this panel right here where we have to go in and rivet in all of those straps that are going to be sticking out and going over the shoulders, going over and actually holding the flap shut, as well as the little handle thing that's going to make carrying this thing around a little bit easier. So for our rivets, we're going to be using these little two-piece copper rivets. Now what they consist of is just one piece that is flat on one side, has a post on it, and the other one is basically just a copper washer. And when you put these together and pound everything nice and tight, you can see that this washer doesn't quite fit. So when you apply pressure with a mallet, pushing it downwards using a special tool, I'll show you in just a second here, it puts enough pressure on this thing that it holds everything together. Then you go through, you snip the top portion off, kind of round it over nicely, and that actually holds everything together pretty much permanently. And so this is our little tool right here. It's a very simple thing. It's basically And so this is our tool right here. It's a very simple thing. It's basically just a straight piece of steel, and then on one side it's got a little hole that's cut into it that fits our... So this is our little tool right here. It's a very simple thing. It's basically just got a hole on one side and then a little rounded bit on the other side. This is a double-use tool, or it's got two functions. Most of the time you're going to see tools like this that have single functions, so they either have a hole or they have the rounded over part, and that's actually what I would recommend, and I'll talk about that in just a second here. But the idea here is that you use the side of the hole to actually fit over that post, pound that washer in as far as you can get it, and then once you've got that part, you can snip off the top of this piece here, and then you can go through and round it over using the little dish side on this tool. Now the problem that I've run into just in my little testing in that is that because you've got this extra width here to have this hole for pounding in, because this is a double-use tool, you end up getting some marks on the leather and that are not ideal. It would be much better to have one normal, straight, narrower tool to do your rounding over of your rivet after it's been cut. I just think it would give a little bit better results. But I ended up buying this one from Tandy Leather because it's just what the tool that they sold, and then I was buying a bunch of other stuff from Tandy, so it just made sense to buy it there. But now that I know a little bit better, I might try and buy some other tools, at some point in the future. So we're just going to kind of go for it. We've got a lot of riveting to do. We have to rivet our larger shoulder straps to the bottom of our straps, kind of the part that attaches to the buckles on the bottom there. We're going to have to rivet all of these to the bag, and then once we've done all that, we can actually start working on the inside of the bag. We also have to do a couple rivets on the top of the bag once we do our stitching, so we're going to be doing a lot of rivets on this thing. I think in total there's like 25 or 26 rivets. The other thing that is important to mention, Redridge Leather also recommends using these little leather washers. So basically you just take a 5/8 punch out some circles, then put a little 1/8 hole in the middle of that, and these just reinforce those washers to make sure that they can't pull out as easily. So it's just a little extra tip, but I found that very very useful and very interesting that he mentioned that. So I'm just kind of following step by step with his guide and going through, and so far the process is actually going really well, I would say. Okay, so this is actually starting to look, it is almost a backpack. Obviously, we just need to create our little bit of structure in there so we can actually hold items in this thing. But at this point, with all of our straps and that on there, It's actually pretty cool. Now, one of the things I will say is that this is not like an outdoorsy type backpack, and those of you that do outdoor activities probably get what I'm talking about here. There's not a ton of support in the straps, anything like that. I knew all that going into this project. I didn't think this was going to be a backpack that I would be taking hiking. Mostly what I want this backpack for is just taking back and forth to work with me every day. I want to be able to put all of my gear in here and just see kind of how the leather wears and tears over time, because I've read a lot of weird things, you know, differences between vegetable tan leather and chrome tan leather. So my goal with this backpack is I used a pretty good quality chrome tan leather for the bag. We're using some good quality vegetable tan leather for the straps and all that. I just kind of want to see what happens to this thing. I'm going to be stuffing this thing in my locker, leaving it on the floor. It's going to get dirty. It's going to get grimy. For a bag that probably cost me at least $100 worth of leather to make, maybe a little bit less than that. We'll say it's at least $80 worth of leather to make. This is going to be a pretty expensive thing, just kind of be kicking around and, you know, putting through the ringer, let's put it that way. But my main thing with this bag is I just kind of want to see what happens to it. So even though it's not going to be great for going hiking and backpacking, that style of bag will probably be coming at some point in the near future, because that's kind of where I would like to go with bag making and that. But for now, this is a very good place to start, because not only is this a nice, easy project compared to, you know, more complicated stuff, it's also a super functional thing. And I also will say that putting in those rivets is a ton of fun, because you're just kind of hammering away. The one thing I do have to work on, though, is kind of keeping them a little bit cleaner. I have a lot of dents and dings in that, because you're dealing with a piece of solid steel, hammering on a piece of copper. You're going to dent it and ding it if you're not careful. But one of the things I did find is this whole little rounded out thing in here is pretty much useless. This tool is made really poorly, so the inside of this thing has all these like machine path marks type things in it. And so when you hammer down on the top of those rivets, or the cutoff part of those rivets, you get this kind of textured look on it, and it looks like crap. So I just used the butt end of this tool and just kind of hammered around in a circle, kind of shaping the top of the rivet to make it look a little bit better. So that worked a lot better and gave it a much smoother and overall nicer appearance. So again, this tool from Tandy Leather is definitely not the thing you want to put money into. It's a really crappy one, and I think it's more expensive than most of the stuff that I saw on Amazon. But if it's the one that you can get, then it does work for what you can do. But yeah, it's definitely not the greatest tool out there. As with most of the tools from Tandy Leather, I will say that, and I'll talk about that more in a future leather working video. But I will say right now, it does involve these tools precisely. But yes, we'll talk about that at a different point in time. But now we move on to the part of this bag that I still don't quite know if I can actually achieve it. So if I open up some of my straps here, the next thing we have to do is basically flip everything inside out, stitch our sides together, and then somehow we have to figure out how to stitch our bottom portions together too. Now, when Claridge Leather made his video and making his bag, he used a sewing machine. And for using a sewing machine, it makes a lot of sense, because you just got to hold your pieces together, use a few binder clips in that to kind of put things together, and then you just run the sewing machine a 1/4 inch in from the edge. It's very easy. Whereas what I have to do is somehow figure out how to hold all this together, because we can't really put glue in this edge here. I mean, I could glue it, but then when we go through and kind of roll out the edges, we're going to end up seeing that gross, gummy looking glue stuff. So I can't really glue it. So I somehow need to be able to punch this, stitch it and all that, and keep everything properly aligned. It's going to take a little bit of figuring out, but I'm very confident that I can do it, because at this point, I'm very excited to get this thing done, because I think it's super cool and it's coming together really nicely. It's just going to be a bit of a challenge trying to get to this next point without going out and spending, you know, at least $2,000 to $4,000 on a leather sewing machine. Alright, so here is our completed backpack. I've got it loaded with all of my stuff to take to work with me. Yeah, as you can see, there's a decent amount of stuff in here. Everything from like just warmer layers to rain jacket, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I've got it all fitting in here with excess space, which is really, really awesome. This thing looks amazing. I'm so happy with the way that it came out. Now, one thing I will say I might do differently in the future, or I might even update on this bag, because I still have the ability to do that, is the inside of the straps here. So I left the inside here just kind of the rough out leather, I think it's called. So it's kind of the inside face of the leather, not the smooth side, it's kind of the fuzzier side. And so on the grab handle here, on the inside, I used some of this Tolkano, which is the stuff you're supposed to use to burnish the edges, as well as finish the inside faces of leather, because it kind of softens or smooths things out. So on the inside of the handle here, we've got this nice finished surface, which looks and feels really good. Whereas on all of our straps, we've got this kind of grippier texture. So I don't quite know which one I prefer, and I think that in the future, I might actually end up doing the Tolkano along the inside of these straps and that. But I also would try and use some thicker leather for these, because I think the stuff that I use might actually even be a little bit too thin. It does feel kind of thin, but again, this is one of those things. This is very much so a learning opportunity, and I'm going to be taking this thing back and forth to work with me for quite a long time, I'm hoping, and we'll see just how beat up it gets. But that is the whole purpose of this specific backpack, is just to kind of see where the wear and tear happens. That way in the future, when I want to start making backpacks where I'm mixing in like Cordura fabric or even just like cotton canvas, I know which areas see a little bit more wear and tear, and so I can mix in some leather. Like I know the bottom of this bag is definitely going to get more wear and tear than like maybe this front face and that. So you could just swap out materials, make things a little bit lighter, make things a little bit less expensive, all that kind of stuff. So this is very much so just kind of a first trial run, a very nice simple bag that'll be great for taking back and forth to work. This will also be great for like summer vacation and that. Like if I'm going to the beach or something, I can take this bag with me and just pack everything in it because it's got that nice big open top to it. So this is just a great general purpose bag. So again, as we close the video here, I want to say a huge thank you to Clear Edge Leather for putting these plans out for free. Again, they're completely free. It's an absolutely amazing set of plans. Really helped me kind of learn the process for making a backpack, which I hugely appreciate. So if you guys are at all interested in getting into leatherworking, there will be a link to his website, his YouTube channel, as well as specifically to these plans in the description down below. But as always, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this project, and I will see you in the next one.